All right, welcome to this webinar. I see we got some people coming in here, so we're just going to give everybody a second or two to join before we get things going. And we also have my colleague Matt, hopefully joining as well, who is a father through surrogacy himself. So me and Matt are going to host this session for you here. But let's just give people a couple of minutes more to join in, and then we will get started ASAP. For you who are already here, just know that you can use the Q&A button throughout the webinar, so you can ask questions if you have any about any topic that we discussed today. So do feel free to do that, and we'll get to those in the end to answer any questions you might have. So let me just give this another second or two, and we're going to be jumping right in. All right. Hello, Matt. Hi.
Good evening to you. How you doing? Sorry, my hair is
I'm
like, oh, there's no one here. Let me just fix myself in.
There are actually two people here already, so we
Oh, they
are
are?
on. Yes, but I'm sure they love you with the good hairdo as well, so don't
That's
worry.
all right. I sent the invite to Michael as well, so he said he might try and jump on too, just to get a
Yeah,
feel for it. So as I was chatting with him yesterday, I said, "Well, come on by if you're free at this time and just got to get a feel for what we're doing."
absolutely. So we'll see if Michael joins then as well. But I do see we have a couple of people here, which is great, and we have always a bunch of people watching these recordings.
Yeah.
So if you have to jump off somewhere in the middle, just so you know, you'll get this recording out to you as well, so you can have a peek. All
Nice.
right. So, Matt, let's just introduce ourselves briefly so people know who we are and what we do. So, I'll let you start first.
All right.
All right, Matt, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us, who you are and what you do at
Okay, sorry. Are we
Hatch.
getting started? Yep, we're ready to
Yes,
go. All right,
we're going.
perfect.
It's
Okay.
already on.
Good to hear. Well, hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. I am Matt Crow. I am one of the intended parent relationship managers here at Hatch. So I work alongside Edvin and our other amazing team of folks who support individuals and couples coming into this world and exploring these different pathways and options. I live up in the Bay Area in Northern California. I have two daughters myself through surrogacy journeys also. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. They weren't with Hatch programs directly, but have a lot of my own personal experience from journeys and my time here at Hatch as well, supporting folks coming in. So I definitely happy to share knowledge and answer questions and be a support for anyone on this journey. Thanks, Edvin.
Awesome. I can see your lovely daughters actually there in the background. So, it's a really
Yeah, they're
nice
there.
picture. Yeah.
They're always just behind there. It's sort of symbolized that they're always just there. Like they're always just there
That's
behind
true.
me.
Yeah, I can resonate with that. You just walk and you're like, oh, so you're right there. Okay, got it. So then you try to walk that direction. Then the other one is down there being like, hi, what are you doing? So yes, they're always around, behind, in front, sides. Yes. But great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Shortly about myself. So me and Matt are colleagues. So we do the same thing here at Hatch, speaking to intended parents, guiding them through this journey. Actually live in Sweden, so I'm based abroad. I used to work most with our international intended parents, but now we kind of all work with all intended parents, which is a greater kind of setup. I also have two kids, so I guess for Matt and I, that's the golden number too. But whatever the number is for you, that's right, that's okay. So I have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old. So I had a bit of a gap there between the first and second one, or second to first one, which was actually quite nice to get that extra support from our daughter to help out. So yeah, that's kind of a bit about me. And we wanted to host this session today because there is one topic we very rarely, at least not me, kind of speak about during our consultations with intended parents, which is basically what happens after, right? We do speak about the whole process of starting, how the process works, but we don't really have the time always, or get the question about, how do you speak to your children about this journey afterwards? Do they have questions, and how do you approach those questions? Matt, I mean, I'm just going to speak for you for one time. I assume you would agree that we don't have the right answers in terms of what should you be doing. But I think it's good to just sometimes hear about people's reflections on it and how we kind of approached it. So I don't have a presentation. I don't have anything snazzy to show you today, which we try to do usually. We just want this to be a discussion between Matt and I, which hopefully will help you with some perspectives. And I've actually also brought an actual idea for you. I have it here with me. We'll look at it later on how you could approach this topic as well. But let's start off just discussing a little bit about Matt during your journey and all of the experiences that that comes with. Was there any time throughout that journey that you were thinking about, the conversations to follow, or is that something that just wasn't on the map in the beginning? What was your experience?
Yeah, no, I definitely feel like so. I think the initial stage was when we were looking for an egg donor. So my husband and I, we obviously had to go on an egg donor journey, going through this too. So I think that was a big part for us, was thinking about, okay, so we don't obviously need this person to be in our life and we want to have that separate. And yes, there's a biological connection there, but they're obviously not a figure in their life. So, but an important aspect to us was when we were looking through egg donors was that the egg donor databases that we used and the one we matched with was open to communication in the future, right? So
Mm,
when our oldest daughter is 18, if she wanted to go down that route, like and just discover a little bit more, we wanted to make sure that yes, that option was there, right? We didn't want to make that decision for our children. And this is personally just us and how we were thinking about
yeah,
it at the time. But we were like, look, we don't want to close that door if they have interest in that. We're not the type that's going to feel like, oh, they're going to leave us at 18 and go find this other family or whatever,
yeah,
or how we were going to refer to it as. So that was important to us, looking at that aspect there. So we were more focused on peace. The surrogacy side, we treated it more. Let's see how it as any relationship, and this is typically when intended parents that I'm working with ask about this type of thing as well. Like relationships naturally progress, right? So you're gonna just some people you just are close with and you are just have that instant connection with and you just it's a natural thing. Others it's a bit more of work and you've got to
mm,
kind of put in. So we were kind of like, look, let's see, we would love to be involved with our surrogate, obviously during the whole program. After that, let's just naturally see what happens, right? We had two very different surrogacy experiences. One, excuse me, one we haven't really seen since the birth. The other one we
yeah.
Christmas cards, birthdays, Instagram, social media we're friends with, and things like that as well. So there's somewhat of a connection there. And then we knew we're always going to have to like just tell the story of what it was. Like our daughters know, like obviously where there's not a mom and a dad, and the older ones now knowing like there's the baby in the belly. So we're getting to that point now. But
Mm,
yeah, so initially more of the focus was like, look, on the egg donor side, let's just keep that door slightly cracked open if need
yeah,
be. And surrogacy wise, well, like let's just see how it goes, type of thing. And that's kind of that was our mindset. We
mm,
tried not to put too many expectations on there, because obviously you don't know what's going to come from it. So you don't want to be overly disappointed if you've got set expectations in those initial stages. And that's how we've kind of kept it at that initial research stage when we were doing it.
okay. And that's interesting because reflecting back on the same for me, I agree. It maybe wasn't so much a thought about how to speak to them about it, or rather how they could, speak to the donor or surrogate about it if they had any questions, right? So I agree. It's a bit of a different perspective, maybe than we're having today. But I do maybe wish I had thought a little bit about it before. Not that it really maybe have impacted anything now, but I feel like it's a good thing to think about because there might be questions, especially in the being gay dads. It's maybe more obvious than if you were a heterosexual couple,
Right.
in terms of, well, a little bit more obvious, very much more obvious. So yeah, so it is an interesting perspective. Okay, so for you guys, it was more about keeping that door open for donor, knowing the donor or being able to meet the donor, rather than how do we discuss actual what happened.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And that's the thing there again, we're being gay parents ourselves, like where it is there is more of an explanation, right? So I think it is a bit more of a personal and a type like line journey that you're walking on when you're maybe a heterosexual couple or a single woman, maybe needing egg donation or surrogacy. There is going to be more of a conversation because it's going to be like, well, how comfortable you are sharing and at what point you have to explain that because naturally children are just going to assume like this is how it is. And yes, you're the parents. Like if it's a heterosexual couple, you're the mum and the dad. There's no denying that. But at some point, it's like, how do we cross that bridge? But yeah, so I think we didn't have to think of that as much being two guys because we always knew the conversation was going to come up. It was more of a let's have fun with it, let's do this. And then we started getting books and things like that from an early age, kind of as even before we had kids about how family makeups and how all families are different and those kind of things. So we were kind of more on that page, yeah. So, but we didn't have to dive too deep onto more of the emotional side. It was more of like, well, we're going to have this conversation. So it's very
Yeah.
obvious we had help.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the route we went with it. And that worked for us.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so tell me a little bit about that then. So it sounds a little bit like you guys were thinking more of, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just going off of,
Yeah, no.
more thinking about, how do we present different family constellations and kind of that families can look different, etc., rather than like we're preparing for this big conversation about surrogacy. Is that kind of correct?
Yeah, so that was more of yeah. So it's like in the early ages, like as I said, my girls are 3 and 6 now. So it was always and it wasn't till probably like preschool age and like family things or like there's Mother's Day, there's Father's Day events at schools, there's seeing kids and like the questions of like, well, why don't I have a mom? Or like or like that. But our girls have always been so confident and just happy, like these are my two dads, and we're lucky in our network and our community. Like it's not like we're in the Bay Area in California, so it is a very liberal type area. Yes, we understand that. But yeah, so it is more of just starting from an early age that the education is like every family is different. Like even I'm originally from Australia, but I live now in California. My husband's two sisters are close by, and one is a biracial couple, and they've got two daughters, and then one is they're another heterosexual couple and they've got like blonde hair, blue-eyed, three boys, right? So we're a very diverse family. We've got like the biracial couple, we've got the gay couple, and then like the two blonde hair, blue-eyed couple as well, and all the kids. So they know family makeups are different. We've got friends that have they're single parents, and we talk about some kids live with their grandparents, other kids they're adopted by other families who want to
Mm,
help other kids grow or go into different like we talk about all those different avenues. And I think having the resources and from an early age, it was like we got to keep it simple. Like you can't
mm,
overcomplicate it because especially my oldest daughter, she likes to think and overanalyze and she really remembers things. So we have to try and tread that. But just yeah, really focusing on like, yep, some mothers have babies, some women carry babies. Like we had another lady help carry you in her tummy, and like my older daughter got to experience, she was 2.5, 3 years old going through the second journey of her like her sister's journey. So she was kind of like, oh yeah, she's in her belly, like that's in her belly. And like
mm.
she was like, well, I was in her belly too. And we're like, okay, you're 2.5. Let's just go with it for now. Like that
Yeah.
you're in her belly too. So yeah, it's kind of along those lines there. And again, sometimes with that, we haven't really got too much into the egg donation piece. That really hasn't come up at this point yet at 3 and 6. It's more of like the surrogacy piece. And it was more of
Mm,
a like, yeah, well, you remember Karen, like she helped us because we couldn't do it and because we didn't have the belly to carry you. And there are families and women out there that will help that. So starting it simple. But yeah, the biggest thing I think is really looking at like what resources you have and who you surround yourself with is the biggest sort of win for that too. And just being open and not sort of trying to hide it, right? Like it's
yeah.
not normal. Every family is different. There's
Yeah.
families like some like even friends at school now. It's like, well, yeah, this girl has she's got two moms and two dads because her parents got remarried, right? And this
Yeah.
one lives with this, and they go between two different houses, and this person has
Mm,
this. So it's and yes, this person does have a mom and a dad, and they all live in one house together. So it's really pointing out the difference in all the families at a young age, and just and not that different is bad, that just
yeah.
everyone's different, right? And be
Yeah.
proud of whatever your family makeup is.
I agree. I feel like that's exactly the same. I wouldn't even call it strategy because just like you go about it, you know what you think is right. But that's exactly what we've done as well. It's more that focus on like, that families can be different and look in different ways, shapes, and forms. And then naturally that will hopefully strengthen them in that next conversation about how about me, right? And how did I end up in this world? And then there's 6 and 5, right? So I agree with you. It's not very deep questions. But I do think that for some of the intended parents watching, it's also, you talked about your relationship with the donor and also with the surrogate. And I know we have intended parents sometimes, expressing opinions about wanting or not wanting to be in touch with the surrogate. But I just thought about that, it's also worth as an intended parent maybe to think about that relationship beyond what do you want as an intended parent, and think about the day maybe if there are questions about this journey, that it might be a resource, just like you said, Matt, so well, like surrounding yourselves with the resources to answer the questions. One of those resources, potentially, if that's the kind of intended parent you are, no judgment either way, to actually have that surrogate as a resource. Because my children meet, our surrogates. We're all busy, so it doesn't happen as much as we would all hope. But video calls or in person when possible on trips, etc. I think that also helps a little bit to be able to say, not having this huge conversation about anything, but rather continuously being met with like that was, X or Y or Jenna or Kayla, whatever, who carried you. I think in my experience, it has helped a little bit because it's become a natural part of chatting with them and understanding that that's where I was in the belly and that was that person. So that I felt was helpful. So for anybody out there, kind of in the middle of having a relationship long term or not with a surrogate, like maybe factor that in to having that resource in the future, which might be easier if you are in touch after the journey as well. Yeah. All right. Awesome. So, are there any questions? Like, I'm sure some people are, thinking about questions for older ages naturally when our kids are 15 or whatever, but they are very inquisitive, right? And they do ask a lot of questions. So, how, with your oldest, especially, like, have you had a lot of questions or do you feel like, that's going to come later? Or how's that experience been for you at that age?
Yeah, so me directly? Yeah, are you
Yeah.
asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, just wanted to make sure. No, yeah, and it is more of a I think the biggest thing, and again, as I mentioned before, like there is a book for everything, and I keep going back to this, and there's so many amazing resources and books, and just even on like TV shows now, and just even like kids' cartoons and kind of things they start watching and finding. Like there's so many like examples of what a family is, and I think it's just important to encourage that. So I think it's really helped build like my oldest daughter, especially she's in kindergarten now, so she was in TK, like depending on where you folks are in schooling systems, but she had 2 years of preschool, a year of TK, and now she's in kindergarten. So she's had a lot of time to get to know other kids and families and see the different dynamics, and also it's really sweet. Like I was in her classroom and I heard another kid ask her, be like, well, and they were having a conversation. It was like one of her friends, and he was like, well, which one of your dad's tummy were you in? Like, and he was like, and this is 5 year old, right? And she was like, well, no, I wasn't in their tummy. He's like, well, so you have two dads, but they didn't carry. And she was like, yeah, someone else carried me for them because she helped us because they couldn't do it. And just the 5 year old explanation to it. And
Mhm.
it was funny because I was talking to his mom later in that week, and she was like, oh, we talk about that a lot at home because she was adopted. So
Mhm.
this her friend Colton is like he's inquisitive about it, but also learned because in his family his mum was adopted, so they've always
Yeah.
talked about families as well. So hearing the innocence of a 5 year old conversation between two kids that come from like families that aren't like the traditional type setup of a family, right? So they know the difference. So but yeah, there's definitely options and there's a lot of great resources out there. We found ourselves as well, like when we didn't have like a big network of like gay dads in our world, so we've really went out of our way to kind of explore, and we've made different friends. So our kids are seeing like other families with two dads, and we've got a few really close knit friends now that are like out of our just general network of family and friends that they can spend time with them and be like, well, these two kids here have two dads and this is their situation. So I think just exposing is important in that
Mm.
world. But also even just to kind of step back a little bit when you were mentioning just on the surrogacy piece before with the surrogates and the relationship. I think it is really important for intended parents going into this to really think about like really what do I anticipate with this? Because it is something that is going to be a big factor. And
Mm.
really, if you are working with Hatch one day, maybe hopefully we can bring you in and kind of support you on these journeys. When you're matching with your surrogate, it's really important to sort of understand kind of what you would anticipate that to look like too. So if you are a family that's like, we want to be best friends with this woman forever, and we want to take vacations together and do this and have each other, and we want her to be like a bonus mom. And you don't have to have the answer, or you might be like, this is for us, it's a very difficult and a very unexpected pathway we're going on. We want to be a bit more transactional with this, right? We just want to kind of We appreciate it. We are very grateful for what you're doing, but it is a little more and there's no right or wrong answer, right? We hope most people are somewhere in the middle of both of those examples,
Yeah.
but it is very personalized. So I think you need to be very honest with yourself and honest with your team that you're working with at your agency of what you were seeing kind of. And I always recommend to intended parents, you've got to think of like what you want before, during, and after, because that's a
Mm,
part of our matching process with a surrogate. Because we don't want to match you with a surrogate that's like wants to be like, I want to be best friends with them. And like with intended parents that are like, this is too difficult for us. We appreciate you, but there's just this sort of like push and pull there. So I think even on the intended parent side, it's important that we're acknowledging and really thinking about this prior to starting your journey so
mm,
that you can get into your journey. And then obviously it is easier post-pregnancy. And when your child's starting to ask those questions that you've either kind of got that ready to go and kind of explain it, or you've got that additional resource of the surrogate still in your life, if that's how it is, to kind of make that more clear too. So I think, yes, there are a lot of great resources, but also a big part of it is starting early and really thinking about what that looks like too. Because I think you mentioned like it's something you don't tend to really have top of mind. Like what do we want in 5 years from now? Like right now, you just
mm.
surrogate of your baby in your arms. Like that's all you
Yeah,
want. So
exactly.
thinking about like the long-term bits as well to help sort of navigate.
Agree. I think that there's so many logistics in the initial phases of researching and starting, and if you're creating embryos with the donor or your own eggs, that there's so much to it that those questions don't really fit into that stressed, if you will, process. So I think it's important, and I like that you said, these conversations about these between these 5 year olds, because it's not only about arming ourselves with what we want to tell our children, it's about arming them with, when they do get questions, to not feel confused or that they don't have any answers and all of that. So I feel like more and more that I'm thinking about it, it's really about helping them in the long run. Like we need to help ourselves first, right? Before we can help our children. But really, that's why we're doing it. So I love the people that are here today that you're thinking about this already, because this is about setting your children up also for, for comfort, and then for that kind of feeling of safety that what's happened.
Yeah.
And there's different ways to do that: conversations, books, math, like you said. And we actually did create a book for our daughter. We are too lazy for a second one. Our son, the second child's always
That
like,
happens. The baby books, everything for the second one just goes down. Like
the
it's
second
like
one
it's
is
too
like,
much
take your
going.
sister's book and read it. It's the same story, different pictures. So I just wanted to show you a little bit. It's really hard on Zoom, of course, to show, but a way to navigate that then, in having conversations, all of that, to make it a bit more visual, we did create a little book. I'm not sure if you can see it. Let me turn off my nice little background here so you can see how that looks.
You're leaving
Take
the
that.
office.
Yes, here we go. Now you can see my home office. So this is the little book we created for our daughter. It's called The Journey. No, not a lot of creativity there on our end. So what we did is that it's basically a book that goes through the process from beginning to the end. So we have pictures of, somebody going to an ultrasound, for example, there, looking at her pictures all the way up until her birth, of course, and going way back to, for example, meeting the egg donor there. So I think this is for us a way to say kind of like, this is the story, and to integrate it naturally in her everyday life. We don't read it all the time. And sometimes she's like, I don't want to read that boring book. And we're like, okay, you're not there now. But it has been useful for kind of having a discussion or easing in what has happened and how it happened, instead of having like this big talk. And I'm not sure, especially for heterosexual couples, if you are heterosexual, you know this better than me because I'm not. Having that conversation, as a big conversation at a given point might be something that you need to think about, versus me and Matt, who are like, it's going to be a natural thing throughout their life, right? They're going to see that we're two dads and we're a bit different maybe than some of the families they see. But as a heterosexual couple, just an idea for a way to maybe ease in that conversation with the story of kinds. And we started reading that to her when she was maybe three, more as a bedtime story, not so much about this is what happened in your, this is why you're here. More like this is a story about you, and we just went through that, and I think it's been helpful in many ways. So just an idea I wanted to bring because I had it in our bedroom. So to bring that. But Matt, do you have any other thoughts, ideas on how to approach this? We talk a lot about books, obviously, which is great. We talked about surrogate being a resource, obviously, families in the same situation being another great resource. Anything else you guys have talked about that you have done or will do in the future, in addition to keeping that door open with the donor, of course?
Yeah, no, I think it's no, and again, just to kind of recap, I think like some of the biggest things to really that the advice I can give them from what I've seen other families do as well is like celebrate families, celebrate the process, celebrate that like yes, there are amazing people out there that have helped us because we wanted you so deeply and like we've wanted to be on this journey, but unfortunately mom or dad or dads or moms or whoever it may be wasn't able to do this by themselves and there's celebrate the fact there are such wonderful people out there to help with these things. Also, like we've tried to not be like shy away from just like using the word, right? Like sorry, and just getting used to those terms
Yeah,
because they are, right? Or like you can like use smaller terms that now our older ones getting a little more understanding, like kind of using the terms what they are, right? Surrogate egg donor, like whatever that may
yeah,
be there. Like, and then yeah, just like really kind of going on how the stories happened and right and how it all came to be and like what it was there. So I think they're the kind of the biggest things with that like we kind of looked at. And I just definitely think would help kind of along your way too. But as open as you want to be, like talk about like the support you have and like everything that you've kind of like been through using the vocabulary, using the terms, and then just kind of talking in different ways, but also talking in ways that kind of understand too. There is one book
yeah,
I'm blanking on it, and it was always helpful because I'm originally from Australia. I don't live there now, but it's like a koala. It's like a surrogacy book, and it's a koala. I'm
yeah. I remember
blanking on the
this. Yeah,
name, like so. It's that was really helpful. It's about a surrogacy journey and the koala carrying the baby. So it kind of goes along that way too, just to help bring it in there. But definitely celebrating the journey that you're on and that your child, when those questions start to ask, like that we have so much deep love and we wanted you so desperately that this is the path we had to go. And it's not always just about a genetic makeup that makes a family or a parent through there as well. So because especially with when even with a if a heterosexual couple and they need an egg donor, right? If it's an age or a medical issue, like it shouldn't dictate that like oh they're I tend to like correct people when I meet with intended parents when they say the surrogate mother and I'm like she's not the mother, she's the
yeah,
gestational carrier, right? She's not the mother. Or if they refer to the egg donor as the mother, I'm like I under like she's not the mother, right? You are
yeah,
the parents, like you are the mother and the father. So I tend to try and correct people a little bit, but more educate in terms there. But we often hear like people say the surrogate mother, and I tend to kind of be like, well, no, like it's not the mother, like you were the parents, like that's
mm,
your child, legally, partially, biologically, but in terms of moving
yeah.
forward, you're the parent. So there as well. But they're probably just kind of the key takeaways and thoughts on my end.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I liked what you said. I mean, the last thing you said is bordering that kind of terminology-ish thing. I do agree with you that something that I don't actually do a lot is to use the correct terminology, to be honest. So that's probably something I'll take away from this, that, labeling things the correct way, which, they are what they are, is also a tool to actually have a discussion about, so what is that word? What does surrogate mean? And getting into that way. Because I tend to say more like, just try to be like more the names, make it more human. But in reality, there's a lot to be said about just using the words that are actually true, right? And not putting so much values into them and letting, children themselves, if they have any values to put in there, to do that themselves and discuss it. So I will take that away from you, Matt. So that was actually great. So being more just like open about that and just kind of discussing what that word means is a great way to learn more for a child as well, I think. I do also want to mention for everybody that's here as an intended parent, of course, when you work with Hatch, for example, there's going to be opportunities to explore this further. Hatch, for example, would require you to speak to a licensed mental health professional before you sign up with our program. It's a part of our background process for sign up process for intended parents. So I think that's also a great opportunity to dive deeper inside of this. I know one of you emailed me before this webinar saying that these are the questions I want to discuss, and what do you think about that? I think that it's important to know that there are resources here beyond what Matt and I have mentioned so far. So that licensed mental health professional, we usually have an hour consultation with you before you can sign up to the program, and you do discuss these kind of communication and telling the children and how you feel about that. So don't be afraid to explore that. This tends to get a lot about timelines and fees and logistics. Like explore these topics, and there are great resources that Matt and I can share as well about how you can do that. And that's the therapy call or licensed mental health professional call you do. That's also great chance to discuss these aspects as well. And I actually did invite one of those therapists or licensed mental health professionals, whatever you want to call them, to this call. They weren't able to join, but we do have their information, of course. So if anybody wants to connect with them, it doesn't have to mean that you're signing up with Hatch. But if you want to do that, just reach out and we'll share that. All right, we do reserve about 30 minutes for these. I hope that you've learned something. If you have any questions, you can feel free to pop them in there. I don't see any questions so far. Like Matt and I said in the beginning, there are no correct answers. Like this is just a attempt to share with you some of the tips or ideas that we have that are thinking about the subject. If you have other things to share with people, go out there and share it. We all need to share the story and journey in a positive way for people to learn. But if you do want to get in touch with Matt or I, you can just go to hatch.us. You can fill out the form there. You can either also email Matt at hatch.us or Edwin at hatch.us. If you want to connect with us, we would be happy to chat with you about your specific situation. I don't see any questions as mentioned, so I do want to thank everybody for coming. I hope you've taken something away from this. And if you're watching the recording, you can just go back and forth and listen to this as many times as you want. So I guess that's great. So thank you so much. And Matt, thank you for being here as well. And that's it for today. All right. Thank you so much. Goodbye.